In the last video, we were talking about the things that Southern politicians and the South was doing to keep the freed slaves still under their thumb. And you know, I mentioned before that when the war was over, and the 13th Amendment was passed, and where slavery is now illegal in this country. And they're like, okay, we're absolutely legally free, but where do we go? I don't know how to, I don't know anything else but being on a plantation. I know farming, or I know this. I can't read. I don't have any money to buy anything. And so they were very stuck. And so one of the ways that the plantation owners, one of the methods they kind of devised to, in a sense, keep them still in a sort of enslavement, not just a purchase type of, I own you type of enslavement, but enslavement due to money and debt. And so what would happen is many times the plantation owner or the property owner would go to a freed black and say, well, I'll let you, rent my property. And you can go and farm on it, and you're going to have to give me a certain portion of your future crop. So you can plant, and when the harvest comes, for use of my land, I get so much. And it goes anywhere from a fourth to a half. But in order for the farmer to plant, he needs to get a plow and maybe a horse and a harness and all these other things. And so he goes to the merchant in the local town, and he has to get the tools, but he's a freed black, he doesn't have any money. And so he gets these tools on loan, saying, well, I can pay you when the harvest comes in, I sell it and I get money. But the interest is up to 60%. That's a huge amount. So he has to really ensure that his crops are very abundant that year. And so he plants, he harvests, he turns over up to a half to the landowner, and then he has to give the remaining portion of the crop to the merchant to pay on his debt. And the sharecropper winds up, if he doesn't have a great harvest, even owing them more money. He can't pay those debts, and now he needs to borrow to get more seed and more things to hopefully the next year he can do better. So the farmer, using credit from the merchant, gets food, clothing, and other necessities, and he's just in more debt. And it is very much a way to still keep the freed slave enslaved. And here you'll see on this, especially for us in North Carolina, the heavy red sections on there really are an indication of anywhere from 26% to 80% of the freed blacks were sharecroppers. And in a sense, if you're a sharecropper, you're not independent, you're really owned. And so that's a huge percentage. And you look, especially around here, Johnston County and the Raleigh area and Wake County, Harnett County, they're heavily up close to the 80%. So this was a very convenient way to keep the released slaves still working on your land. And in a sense, hooking them in and keeping them there, not through tangible chains, but the chain of debt. So it was. Now, Lincoln was elected in 1864, and then he was assassinated, and you have Johnson being the president, and he was a moderate Republican, and Lincoln was the even more moderate than Johnson. But then you had the radical Republicans in Congress, and Johnson, with the impeachment, they're fighting. And so by the time we get to 1868, the Republicans got Johnson out of there, and they nominated Grant, General Grant. And he was a very successful general at the end of the war. Kind of had a hard time finding his role in life, but that's a whole other story. Grant did attempt to enforce the Reconstruction. But with Reconstruction, you have these organizations and these people going down south, and they're trying to manage it, and it's very easy for corruption to happen. Somebody from the north could come down and say to a southern plantation owner, will you give me some money and we just won't enforce this? And so there was so much corruption in his administration that it really divided the Republican Party. And now with the radical Republicans and the scandals, the Republican Party wasn't unified enough to fight. And so they had very little energy left to really push and fight the South to establish equity in the Reconstruction. So because of all the scandals in Grant's presidency in his administration, he lost public support, and the Republicans said, no. And by this time, 1868, we're getting into 4 years, so it was 1872, and people are getting tired. It's kind of like the public with Afghanistan, the war on terror. They're like, we're getting tired of that. And so they're willing to go on, and a lot of things are happening at this time. The opening of the West, and the Second Industrial Revolution, and new inventions. And so people are kind of looking for opportunity, and they're like, it happened, it's done, it's, we're going forward. The country was divided, we're going forward. So in the 1876 election, Hayes was elected, and he made a deal with the Southern Democrats. And he said, if you will vote for me, we will end Reconstruction. We'll get out of your business, we'll leave you alone, we pass those amendments, we're done, we all want to move forward. And their deal, he was elected with the help of the Southern Democrats, and it was called the Compromise of 1877. Now, what did Reconstruction look like in North Carolina? We seceded, so we were required to create a new constitution. And when we did, 23 of the delegates were former slaves. And that was a big deal. The new constitution gave all males, 21 and above, the right to vote. Obviously, it was just males. Females were not enfranchised yet. The radical Republicans took the major offices in North Carolina. The governor, the lieutenant governor, the offices, the positions in the government that really held some power. Conservative Southerners really are still pushing back against that. And so the Ku Klux Klan and resistant organizations like the Klan developed. The Klan was and still pretty established here in North Carolina up till about 20 years ago, when you cross the county line from Wake County into Johnston County and say, welcome to Johnston County, home of the Ku Klux Klan. So this was not, this is very recent history that push and that resistance still goes on. So what happens next? We've ended Reconstruction. Hayes did that compromise. What's going to happen now with the United States?
Mr. Charles or Mr. Brimley.
And now people are really looking west. They're really looking out west to settle those new lands and those new properties. Go west, young man, go west. There's, like I said, a new industrial revolution, new industries, new inventions. And with this huge growth, America was really starting to gain prominence in the world as a country, as a powerhouse. So all this is going to lead us into the 20th century, the century of the world wars. So we are beginning to grow into a place of prominence. And that's what we'll begin to look at in our next video.